Hey everyone, it's Lexi. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the top 5 books that I ended up reading this spring. So in this video, I'm going to be going through all the books that I read during March, April, and May. So how this video is going to be set up is I'm going to be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading over this season. I'll give you the reviews, like my rating for them, and then the top 5 books I'll go into more detail with them. So without further ado, let's get started. So in March, I first ended up reading Three Dark Crowns by Kendare, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. I then read The Plum Tree by Ellen Wiseman, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. And then to finish out the month, I then read Girl Missing by Tess, which I gave a 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars. Moving on to April, I first read Between Sisters by Kristen, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I then read Still Life by Louise, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then read Modern Girls by Jennifer S. Brown, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. The Beauty and the Beast novelization, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And Lost in a Book by Jennifer Donnelly, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars as well. Moving on to May, I first read A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. The Pearl Thief by Wein, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I then read Black Dove, White Raven, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. So as you can see, I had a lot of books that in terms of the ratings were all over the place, but overall I was able to name down 5 books that I really enjoy. So the first one is Still Life by Louise, and this follows a story of an inspector named Chief Gamache who lives in Quebec, and during Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, which is in October, he gets a call and then he finds that a older woman in this town of Three Pines has been murdered. It looks like maybe just a terrible hunting accident, but he knows that there is something more to it that meets the eye. And what I really liked about this, I really love these kind of crime novel, like looking into these murder mysteries, and this one really stood out. I was really happy that I picked it up. What's really unique about this is that, and usually with these kind of crime novels, the detectives are very arrogant, they cheat on their wife, and they're rude and just like all that like stereotypical like detective. But what I liked about Chief Inspector Gamache is that he's very soft-spoken, he listens, he often calls his wife and asks for advice, which I really liked, and it was really fresh and new, and I really liked it. I really loved the town of Three Pines. I really want to go and live there. Just how she described it, it was like the perfect small town. It had like a Stars Hollow vibe to it, if you know what I mean. Just everyone like knows everyone, and I really liked it. I love the little twist at the end with how everything ended up, and I'm excited to kind of continue on with this series. I know this has I think maybe 8, or I don't know, there's a lot of books in this series, so I'm excited to kind of pick up more as I kind of finish my TBR. And yeah, so if you're interested in going into kind of the crime drama, this one and then the next book that I'm going to show you, I think would be really good getting into that array. This author does a really good job, and if you are Canadian, there's little tidbits in here that you'll only get about Canadian culture, which I really appreciated. Being Canadian who lives in America, so like I got my little sense of home without actually having to go there, so this one was really good. I'm excited to kind of continue on with the series. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars just because it was hard to keep track of, there's so many characters, but it was really good, a really good debut, and I loved it. So as I said, this one also would be a good one if you're interested in going into the crime genre or like the murder mystery one, and this one is Girl Missing by Tess, and Tess is by far one of my favorite authors of all time. She wrote the Brazilian Iris series, and there's a new book coming out in August, which I'm so excited for. And she actually started out writing romance novels, and this one was her first foray into the crime one. So it does have a little romance aspect to it, but I really enjoyed it. So it follows a girl named Kat Novak, who is a medical examiner in Boston, and she uncovers this body who looks this healthy woman who looks like maybe nothing happened to her, but she kind of finds that she mysteriously overdosed on this drug that they're not really sure what it is. and no one really thinks nothing of it until a couple days later, near that same location, another girl has overdosed as well. So she's thinking there is something more to this that meets the eye, and I really like this. I didn't really guess the ending towards it. I was like really grasped to it. I did finish it within a day. The font in here, I will say, is really big just with this novel, but I was really gripped the whole time. I loved it. Some parts were a little bit unrealistic, but whole time I was on the edge of my seat. It was really good. I don't know, I think a lot of people, if you're interested in going into this genre, like the murder mystery, check out Tess Gerritsen. She does a good job. Or let me pull this up here. The Bone Garden's really good. It has a historical aspect to it as well. But yeah, she's really good. She is a physician, or was a physician, so like her medical terminology is on point. I'm in the medical field, so I know like what she's writing. I was like, I know what that means. But yeah, she's really good. I highly recommend you check out her works. The Rosoli Novel series is really good too, so yeah. Next, I then have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and this was Emma Watson's book club pick for her Goodreads, our shared shelf for May and June, and it follows a story of a girl named Fred who lives in a dystopian futuristic America where a patriarchal, misogynistic government takes place and women lose all their rights with everything, their body, their lives, everything. So Offred's main purpose in life is, or as a handmaid, is to produce children with the commander or the household that she's assigned to. So I think this book is really important because although it is dystopian, it's almost a warning of what could happen if things continue the way that they are with our, especially in American society, what's going on now with in terms of government and women's rights being kind of in jeopardy. I think it's a warning, and I think it's something really interesting. I read the author's note at the end, and she mentioned how she kind of based this on societies in the past where women slowly got to lose rights until they didn't have any, and what these societies ended up turning into. And I think that's really scary. What's scary about it is that I can see this actually happening, and that is terrifying. So I think this is something girls and boys need to read. It is a bit mature, so maybe wait until you're a little older, but I think it has a really important message to it overall. And yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because her Margaret Atwood's writing style is a little different. So if the narrator is reflecting on something that happened in the past, she doesn't use quotations to distinguish between the narrator and another person talking, so you kind of have to read those paragraphs really carefully because you don't know like what part is dialect and what part the narrator is saying. But overall, I think it is a really important book to read, and yeah, it's really haunting. Next, I have A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. For those of you who don't know, this follows the story of a girl named Farah who is a human and one day is hunting in the forest near her house and shoots a wolf who ended up being a fae in disguise. So as part of the treaty that was forged 500 years ago, a life for a life, so like Tamlin, who was kind of the ruler of the court that guy that Faye died in, makes her live in the Fae world, and it just takes off from there. I will say I was not the biggest fan of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I had a lot of issues with it, but I still stuck with it, and A Court of Mist and Fury just blew me out of the water, so you could see how excited I was for this. I don't think this one is as good as A Court of Mist and Fury, but I really enjoyed it. There's so many characters that I was so attached to, and so this is like the last book following Farah and Rhysand's storyline, but the next 3 books will cover, I think, other characters. So this kind of concluded Farah and Rhysand's storyline, but it left a lot of the minor character storylines open-ended. So I'm really excited to see how this, like the next one, I'm excited to see which character's perspective we get to read of. There are some parts I had a lot of problems with, just in terms of Moore's character and just kind of how that was all handled. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I was gripped. It was like, I was like, oh my goodness, this book is so tiny when you compare it to in terms of the thickness of A Court of Mist and Fury, but this one they use like the tissue paper, so it's like really thin, but I really enjoyed it. As I said, I gave it like a 4.5 to 5 stars. I really liked it, and I can't wait for the next one to see like whose storyline we get to read from next year. And then to finish out the top 5 books that I read this spring, I then have The Pearl Thief by Elizabeth Wein. So if you don't know, Elizabeth Wein is probably one of my favorite authors. Codename Verity is probably one of my all-time favorite books like ever. So this is a prequel to Codename Verity in a sense that it follows Julie before we get introduced to her in Codename Verity. And so Julie is about 15 turning on 16, and she goes to visit her family's estate. I know they're like Scottish royalty. Her grandma, if this means anything to you, I don't know what this means. Her grandma is the equivalent of what Maggie Smith's character's title is in Downton Abbey, if whatever that is. I don't know, but they're royalty. So her grandfather passed away a couple months ago, and Julie is coming home for the last time to her family's estate in Scotland. And so her grandfather was in a lot of debt, not only paying for his medical bills because he had cancer, but he was not good with his money. So Julie's grandmother decides to sell the estate and all of the artifacts kind of in there, because her grandfather was kind of like an archaeologist in a sense. So one day Julie, when she gets home, she goes to the river and just is relaxing, and she ends up waking up in the hospital not remembering what happened. She has a big bump on her head and she can't remember the events leading up to how she got hit in the head. And while she's in the hospital, one of the workers at her estate has gone missing as well. And so when Julie is kind of going through her family's like heirlooms, she noticed that a kind of bowl that had like a fortune worth of pearls has gone missing, and so she thinks that may have something to do with why she was hit in the head and this worker mysteriously missing. I really liked how this book kind of gave Julie much more dimension to her, and she's very much dynamic. She already is like this in Codename Verity, but this book just adds more layers and layers to her character, and I really loved kind of seeing that. We get to learn why her codename is Queenie, which I love. But I really liked how it also shed light on the Tinkers, which were kind of the equivalent of Scottish gypsies that are still around today, and just how that culture was kind of scrutinized and harassed, even still is now. So I liked learning about that culture and how it represented the LGBTQ community as well. I felt like it did a good job there. And so yeah, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a little bit hard to get into, but overall I really liked it. Some of the characters' names are really similar, so it was hard to keep track of who, but I really loved it. Julie is such a complex character, so I'd love to get more from her. If Elizabeth Wein were to write a prequel part 2, I would be totally over it. So yeah, this one was really good. So if you're interested in starting to read the Codename Verity duology, I'd start with Codename Verity and then read this, just because there's some things in here that were kind of left mystery in the first book. So yeah, I really love this series. It's so good. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what you felt about some of these books and what were your favorite books that you read this spring. So yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.